My hunch on it was you'd walk downhill until you're like, realize, well, I'm a little ways away from camp, and then hike up. So if you're hiking downhill, you can cover a fair amount of terrain. So we got on the ill-defined rib where the camp was, and below that I saw a corpse, and I went and looked at this corpse and ascertained pretty quickly, within getting to 30 feet of this person, that it was a modern person due to the equipment and the clothing that this person had. But this was a real interesting clue for me because I saw how this person was in relationship to the rock and certain collection zones. I've seen it on big mountains where material funnels to a certain point. So seeing this first deceased person was a real clue. I was going, what would the mountain naturally do? What would something that was carried away in the mountain, where would it lie? I started going back uphill, and eventually I saw a blue and yellow object fluttering in the wind. I didn't know what that was, so I saw that, and I go, I'm going to go look at this. So I was looking up at this yellow thing, and I looked over to my right, and all of a sudden I saw a patch of white that wasn't rock, and it wasn't snow. And all of a sudden, I'm going to go look over here. And as I started traversing closer to this, I saw, well, it appeared to be the lower part of a leg, and it was a heel. And I ascertained it was an old body, hobnail boots, natural fiber clothing. It all worn away, and it was his bare upper back was there. His torso was exposed to the elements. So I called over the radio, and my first radio transmission was, last time I tried a boulder problem in a hobnail boots, I fell off.
I heard out of my radio, which was in my down suit, I just heard hobnail boot. Quickly unzipped it and said, what? I could see Conrad waving like this down on this black bench. Jake started moving down, and I didn't know if the other people had picked up that transmission because we had to keep our radios inside the down suits so they stay warm and they would work. So my next transmission was, let's everyone get together down here for Snickers and tea.
The radio calls started coming in about hobnail boots and Snickers and tea, and you know, with all the effort to pick up the radio, I just was gonna blow it off until Tap came across and said, Andy Politz, I need to talk to you on the radio, something very blunt like that. We had decided that once we made any contact, as quickly as possible go into radio silence because of the security of the radio calls. And we knew other expeditions were listening, and we knew that everybody in Nepal could hear us.
Once you find this man on the mountain, well, then you should be able to very easily go through everything he has, right? And that wasn't the case. I mean, should we be doing this? You know, I mean, this is a man we respect. This is a dead man. I kept telling myself and then telling the others, well, no, here we are disturbing him now. Let's see if we can make this productive. Let's see if we can tell his story, which I think would have been important to him. And let's see if we can do it once and not have to do it again.
His body appears to be mummified. There's rope around his waist. Oh, still some socks. You can see a boot. Second boot appears to be on his foot. You can see the metal caulks bottom of his boot. And that boot, that leg, is angulated fracture, so first guess is that he took a fall. Again, you can see rope around his body. Okay, over on this side you can see his layers, his wool sweater, long underwear, cotton.
So you got a cut here. This was here before he started. Thumb split just exactly where mine is.
Okay, these are the collar. Here, submit. Here,
Wait, this is George Mallory.
really?
George Mallory.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
See that? George Mallory.
Oh my God.
We expected that this was Andrew. Following the stories below the ice axe, the Andrew Irvine's ice axe. However, we just found a shirt with a George Mallory tag on it. And I'll tell you, it blows you away. Now that doesn't mean this is George. Maybe Andrew's borrowing one of his shirts. Still, it does. It places it in the right period. And it's the real thing here. Blew me away.
Burying George Mallory. We didn't find the camera. We looked fairly hard.
All due respect is shown by us having had to disturb the body of George Mallory. I'd like to say Psalm 103. The Lord is full of compassion and mercy, slow to anger, and of great goodness. As a father is tender towards his children, so is the Lord tender to those with fear, for he knows of what we are made. He remembers.
This guy was a really talented climber. It took a great degree of skill and confidence to go with that limited amount of gear to that distance.
What Mallory did and Irvine presumably did was just phenomenal.
You could sense something of his determination. I could. And I found myself coming away from it thinking, well, maybe he did summit.
In 1924, it took nearly 2 weeks for the report of the climbers' deaths to reach London. The country was shocked by the news. 75 years later, George Mallory again became headline news, this time within hours. The world was fascinated by the story. But had they reached the summit? Without finding the camera, the last hope now lay in the personal effects found on his body. Could they somehow offer a clue to what might have happened?
It was very difficult at the scene to distinguish one layer from another because they were kind of discontinuous, except on his arms where there were about 7 to 9 layers. Incredible, very fine layers though, of cotton and wool, but all of it adding up to not even a 1/4 inch,
Look at all the blood.
Yeah. These wounds, there were flesh wounds. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This was a sock. Not very thick. You wonder if it's lost a little thickness over the years, but they sure, all of it just feels so fine. Now, here's something that you found on the hill without opening.
Yeah. Yeah, we could tell there was something in there.
Now, what would that be?
Zinc oxide, I'll bet.
Ah, okay.
It might be the same
Sunscreen.
stuff that was in here.
Does it have a smell, Dave?
Does it?
Not. Why don't you try it? I can't detect it if it does. Looks like they ripped it in half and
It
shared it.
smells like, yeah, sunscreen.
Here was what we considered a pretty key find while we were up on the hill. When Jake pulled these out of his pocket, that meant that they were climbing down after the sun had gotten down. So they're coming, well, we're assuming from this that they were coming down when they fell. And if it was a spare, that theory is no good, but the reason that that's hard to figure on is he's got such a sparsity of gear. It's hard to imagine him carrying a second pair of glasses. This was one of the first things we found. You found the label first. It said George Mallory, but I can remember, reading about him taking an altimeter, and it does go to 30,000 feet, which in 1924 must have been somewhat unique. Probably since people didn't go that high, I doubt the instruments did. It says Kerry, London, compensated. The glass was broken out when we found it, and no hands. I think we all thought we were going to look at it and solve the riddle right there, But that's a